Before the video starts, I want to say that these are just my opinions and don't take them to heart and yada yada, you get the idea. Bite Night had a rough but successful start once it released, and it still is successful, but I won't be going into detail about that in this video. But I do recommend you go check out my several other Bite Night videos I made, and it would mean a lot to me if you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm almost at 50 subscribers and I would greatly appreciate it. But enough of the self-promo, I'm going to get into the real reason I made this video. Bite Night can save itself. I say this because throughout the release of the game, and after some questionable updates, talking about you DSD change, it felt miserable to play. Obviously that's not the case for everyone, if there's still so many people playing the game up to this point. But I also say Bite Night can save itself is because of a recent announcement they made. Now I was so tapped out of Bite Night at this point that I didn't even know they made this tweet. Like a friend of mine had to tell me actually. I'm not saying I gave up on the game or anything like that. I'm just saying that there really wasn't any reason for me to keep tabs on the game with how boring it was, unless it was for like a big announcement, which would happen, you know, earlier this week, I think. I don't know. Also, I'm just keeping tabs of several other ASIM games, like in my list of Discord servers. Now, there's a lot to what they said in the announcement, but I'm only looking for specific things, so I'm gonna be ignoring specific parts. Now, this is the same announcement where they say they'll be delaying the game to May 30th. All this is cool and all, you know, a big huge update to fix the game, which they did need. Yeah, I don't mind that, but I'm more focused on 3 specific things. This isn't exactly a part of the update, but it's just something I've said before, that I dislike how the killers and survivors interact with each other, and I don't like how they're already moving on to other killers and survivors when the ones they have now are still flawed. But you know, what can you do? But hey, maybe the quality of life section is actually balancing. I don't really know. They didn't exactly specify balancing as like a key factor on the image I just showed, so. But I can say that I think the game would be, well, I'll say that I believe that the game can avoid being bored, like how I felt when the game released after a few updates. They did mention more objectives and quests and achievements to achieve in the game, so that'll definitely save them from that. But I doubt these objectives and achievements are meant to be done the entire match, so they still gotta work on how people communicate with the killer, in my opinion, because I still find that boring and very narrow-minded and very brain dead. But moving on, I'm gonna talk about the puppet now because that was one of the main things I wanted to talk about. When they decide to implement her, or whatever you wanna call the animatronic, I hope they don't make them like so similar to the other survivors. We do not need another mimic, and we do not need another innard. We need someone unique. I hope and I pray that they actually use the reference material from the games and even the movie if they have to make a good character. Well, make a good killer in this context, that being the puppet. Here's a good example. Maybe for the puppet as a killer, you can make it so that you have to interact with her, so then her music box stays active and not doesn't go down completely, or else she gets stronger. That is a good way to encourage confrontation with the killer. Because with the rest of these killers, it's kind of just stay away from me for as long as possible, which kind of isn't, you know, the player's fault. It's just how the game is, considering almost every killer one taps you if they have a combo, and then just 3 taps you with just base damage. Now, I'm not saying this is a problem. The way it's implemented in Bite Night is good. Just we need more options when in these kind of scenarios, and more possibilities that can happen in interactions. But hey, I can't say much this time because we don't have a video based off the puppet like we did with the technician, so we really just gotta hope and pray that they make a good design and just make it so the killer is just well implemented in the game. And I hope they do a thorough testing of this update, because recently I feel like they don't do it enough, or don't do it well enough, not to hate on how they make the game. They have made good decisions and all, but recently, or like for example when they made the DSD change, the other killers, like other than Springtrap, were just tragically broken, or just made it so the way the character works are just fundamentally flawed. Not flawed in the way that makes them bad, but flawed that it makes it so the characters lose their purpose. Like Ennard, with the new DLC change, he's practically a washdown character. And for, what's it called, the Mimic? Yeah, the Mimic? Yeah, he's just more tickle time mode than swap to strength mode when you get your full DSD. But I'm sure they changed that now from what I've seen in the Discord server. And I think they will make better changes now. But moving on from the killer, the puppet, or whatnot, I still want to talk about the survivors because that's gonna be what you play as the most in these kind of games. Obviously, is grass screen kind of take. Now, when I think of a survivor being flawed in this game, I really think of technician and fighter, because those were just terribly implemented, and what they decided to make use of how they made the characters work are just terrible. Looking at the only survivor that was released after the update was technician. They practically just tossed around some random props, gave someone the vending mask and said, yo, go have fun on the playground, when it really isn't like that. This character is such like a worser security guard, and the vending mask is so map-sided. It's like, when will you ever get to use this? I'm not saying that this survivor is flawed. Well, it has some flaws, of course, but I'm not saying it's utterly garbage. It has its uses and stuff like that, but it really doesn't put a good taste in my mouth when I see this as like one of the first survivors being made in the game, when it's not really creative. Or, well, it's creative, at least the concept of it, but the implementation is terrible. Like, you're telling me I got a move like I can face the wall, which is kind of broken on some maps in some spots, that's why it's so, you know, map-sided, but you're telling me this is the main like move in my kit that should really be the reason I'm unique, and I can't even use it like consistently throughout the match. Now, I'm kind of flabbergasted they were able to make someone that can phase through walls like as a base move weak, because they had to buff it on release by removing the slowness after you phase through it. Of course, I don't got footage because I'm not playing that game at the moment. I don't want to play it. It's boring. It was actually so boring I went back to Outcome with some friends, and that was low-key like fun, even though we got belt to ab by Fleetway with how unbalanced he is in pub lobbies. But hey, you know, you can't be picky. Another thing they make sure they can't do on the next update is make them like fighter. Do not make a survivor dependent on one move to actually be useful. If they do that, they would kill the character. Of course, fighter isn't killed as a character. He got like buffed out there recently where the hitbox is bigger on his counter, but that doesn't help. It really doesn't help when M1s are fast, and like just how counters work in Roblox are just terrible overall. And I think the last part I want to talk about for the upcoming survivor is that make it so the character is like forced to interact with the killer in some ways, not the same way as fighter. That is terrible the way they did it, but in the ways that make it so they want to help the team, because almost every survivor in this game make it feels like you want to be by yourself and be alone. For Medic, I don't really blame them. Medic has like 90 HP and is the healer of the game. You don't want to be targeted or being chased anyway with that kind of character, with the role you're choosing to be. That's not good English, but you know what I mean. Now, moving on from the survivors, because I love ranting about them, but I gotta get to the next topic, is the objectives. The objectives currently in the game are okay, I guess. The generators is a bit different from Forsaken, so that's a good step. And then the battery is, you know, it's not that bad, it's unique. You kinda can't do much, you gotta be aware of your surroundings. Cause a skill, or like, you need an ear, or two of them, and an eye, or two of those as well, to actually not get punished for using a battery, or just not paying attention. But just like how I talked about the puppet, I'm gonna talk about the objective. Make them more unique, make them innovative, make them more FNAF based. You're a FNAF ASIM, you know? Now, I don't have a lot of examples for these, but hey, I got one. And hey, it's not my job to. I'm not making the game, you know? But we could have an objective where we simply mess with old animatronic suits, where we have to, you know, pull them apart or deactivate the spring locks inside of them. How they would do this, I don't know. I'm just lobbing out an idea. Objectives are kind of hard to actually give my opinion on, considering that you do these like a lot in a single match, so making them not repetitive would be quite difficult. So I won't get too much into that, and I won't criticize or say much about it, since I wouldn't know how to solve it either. But I think I've ranted long enough. I had a script for this video, but I did not go off it pretty much at all. I had like the same idea, but I did not say almost any other words from this like that I said now on the script. But hey, that's a good thing, right? If I like talking about it, I don't need no script. But hey, I'll just wait for this update to come out, decide what my opinion is on it, make a video. You know how it is. Hot dog, taco, hamburger. Oh yeah, and hook a brother up, like and subscribe and comment. Okay, bye.